Liverpool are expected to be receiving a bid from Saudi Arabian football for Mo Salah, which is eye-watering. Whether or not they take it or not is a completely different matter. We'll see what happens over the next couple of days. But with Diaz, Jota, Gakpo and a resurgent Nunez all playing for Liverpool and fit, would they have the requisite firepower to cope without Salah should that Saudi deal come to fruition? I mean, I don't think that they'll want to sell him this window, but if they did, they have got more firepower than most, haven't they?
Yeah, but they're still weaker, aren't they? Because what they don't have is that reliability which Salah gives you even when he's playing badly of goals. Done it year in, year out. He scores consistently 25 plus. You know, he's an incredible footballer. So,
is there anyone you see stepping into the breach? Because you know what happens when an opportunity is created. Often people grasp the nettle. That's what Spurs fans are hoping that Richarlison will do. In terms of in Harry Kane's absence, he won't obviously get to the level of Harry Kane. Is there anyone that you can see in the Liverpool mix that could subsequently step up? Nunez is the obvious candidate to score more goals. Can you see that being a sort of freeing of the shackles of Nunez because he becomes more susceptible to being picked more regularly because Jurgen Klopp has less choices?
I think that's a great point, yeah. What I think you'd find is if Gakpo, for example, or Jota was to fill the right-hand side, if Salah left and they didn't sign anyone, what you would find is their output would become greater because they're playing more and their confidence would grow.
Yep.
And actually there's also an argument to suggest, a bit like Henderson did when Gerrard left, is that the flower blooms more because they're not as intimidated, or not intimidated, is the wrong word, but you know they're allowed more game time and more space to show
Give
their
them more latitude.
Yeah, bigger platform if you like.
Yeah.
So I think Liverpool would cope fine, but I still don't think in those big moments that Salah gives you in the big games that they would be able to compete for the league. I still think they'd compete for the top four, but it would be more difficult. So if you had across the front, if you had Diaz back fit, well, he is back fit, playing well, so Diaz would chip in double figures. You'd need Nunez double figures. You'd need Gakpo and Jota, really, between them all to be chipping in with double figures.
Nunez would get double figures.
You should expect that.
Yeah.
You should expect
No, you should.
Yeah.
But you probably wouldn't get those four with double figures if Salah stays.
That's my point.
Because they wouldn't have the time.
Right.
So
it's not beyond the wit of Liverpool or the perception of reality that this deal could find its way happening, and Liverpool being not predominantly uncomfortable with the ramifications of it, and maybe going again as Liverpool have done previously in January, like they did with Lucas Diaz when they brought him forward because Spurs were trying to nick it.
Yeah.
And have themselves a striker in January because they've got the money now.
My feeling is if they come in with over 100 million, that 31-year-old, he's probably going to go next summer anyway for less because his contract's then only got a year left. I'd be taking it. Makes Liverpool weaker, but for the bigger, for the greater good.
It makes Liverpool weaker this season,
yes, but
gives them an opportunity to reinvest
no
long-term.
players bigger than the club, any club, not just Liverpool.
Luis Diaz is a terrific player, and he started the season really well. He was injured for a lot of last season, but when he did play last season, he was still great.
When he got brought off because
he was on Sunday because of the sending off. I was fuming as well because he's in my fantasy team. But he's a real talent. He can add goals to his game, even more goals to his game. And the finish against Bournemouth was terrific.
Well, he doesn't. Since every time he plays for Liverpool, he's a goal threat. He doesn't need to add goals to his game; they're already there.
Yeah, but it's the first time he scored in back-to-back games. For Liverpool,
but he's a winger, back-to-back. He'll get goals if he plays. What he is different from the others is he travels with the ball really well. He's got that great ability to go past people.
What do you think of Jota?
I think he's a very reliable goal scorer, end product really good, but he's a bit. He needs to polish up his link up and his other bits. But he's very reliable in terms of getting your goals, so you'll always have him in and around. I don't think he's... I mean, for me, we'll probably talk about it, well, unless we're doing it now, I thought the actual Nunez dilemma.
Yes, we are going to do it now.
I say dilemma. I've said from day one, before the season started, he'd be in my best 11 for Liverpool, 100%.
Well, his XG last year was good and solid for the number of minutes that he played, and he didn't live up to that. He missed a couple of big chances.
He played wide a lot.
Sometimes,
he's not a wide player.
And he got into we were there, the dodgy situation with Crystal Palace, which stopped him from really getting any momentum.
I think he hit the woodwork more than any other player as well.
Yeah.
He is going to score so many goals. He's got great...
He was sharp on Sunday, wasn't he?
Great pace, physical presence, good in the air on crosses. He'll run behind. His link-up's not that bad. Jurgen has expressed concern about his defensive intelligence, but I don't see that being a big issue to work on because he's got the physical capability to press and run about and chase people. So you just work with him on it. I think he's the most perfect 9 we've got. Gakpo can play up there, but he's not really a 9. He can drop in midfield, play as a 10, play on the left, but he's got to play him. He's got to give him now, let him go.
They've spent a bit of time with him as well because he's been a bit of a butt of the jokes and it's been a bit of a laugh of the joke. His English isn't great. He's spent a lot of time trying to get his English up to speed because they want him to be able to communicate in English in the dressing room, on the training pitch. He also has claimed that he's benefited from turning off social media after facing criticism in his early life at Liverpool. He said, I used to live watching the social media networks. It made me bad. They say they keep criticising me, but I don't see anything now. I am working in silence and things are working for me. For me, let them speak what they want. My head is fine. I continue to work in silence. Whatever minutes touch me, I will go in, do my job and try my best. If you were advising players now, would you say to them, don't get involved in social media?
It depends upon the personality of the individual. If you want to take stock of total strangers saying destructive things about you and use it in a constructive way to advance yourself, then read their quotes and push yourself on from it. If it's something that impacts upon you, then of course we all know that social media is a bastion of drivel and, and emboldening imbeciles at times to say things that they wouldn't have the temerity or strength of character to say to somebody if they got the opportunity to say to them. They'd probably be too busy asking for his autograph.
Yeah, but it can impact you, can't it?
Well, it can.
Even when you're reading it. Sometimes I'm sure you sit there
when
and
you're
go,
younger.
wow.
No, I couldn't care less what people... But people of value, people that I respect, people that I'm fond of, if they say something to me that has an edge to it or something that I've done, I would take it at face value. People that have no idea what they're talking about, only looking at it from a certain perspective and don't have the value in my life, then I really wouldn't. But I'm older and wiser.
But sometimes you do feel the need to correct the record with people who say the wrong things to you.
That's different. That's me correcting the record. That's not me taking...
That's not taking energy and time and
depends
brain
how much
power.
energy you want to deploy to it. Depends if you want to get involved in a protracted conversation with somebody rather than do a drive-by and simply turn around and say, wrong, that's how you're wrong, bye, move along.
I just turn it off. I don't get involved with it. What about you?
I'm not big on social media, but I do have some abuse on there, yeah.
Sorry, I shouldn't do it, Danny.
That's fine. It's fine. I'm very lucky, I think, in that the majority of 99% of anything I've received negative doesn't bother me at all. And I think a lot of people say it doesn't bother them, and it does. And I think it takes thick skin, resilience, and years of being around it and being criticised to build. Football helps with that because you take a lot of criticism, especially back in the day when criticism was much more consistent than it is now. It's frowned upon a little bit now, for coaches to shout at young people, God forbid, tell them they've done something wrong and demand more. My God, imagine.
Terrible times we live in.
Imagine upsetting a 12-year-old because you're telling him to do a bit more. But anyway, I think I'm quite fortunate. So I can contextualise it quite easily. You'd have to really go deep to.
But that's the benefit of age, experience.
Yeah.
And when you're a young man,
Emotional intelligence.
And also he's got the added disadvantage of he's not linguistically in the right place. He's culturally out of step right now because he's not from this country, and all those things are not going to help. But he has a choice, and
a good choice,
in order to be a professional footballer, you have to have strength of character in the first place, because there's so many people that want to be professional footballers, and it requires a mindset. Whether you're playing in League One or you're playing at the elite end of the pyramid, there's a strength of character that those that want to be footballers have that some others don't.
Absolutely,
and it supersedes ability sometimes.
And listen, I've met lots of footballers over the course of my career, and you notice it. It's there.
Yeah, of course it is.
Always at all times. That professionalism, that drive, that hunger, that little bit of edge that gets them to be better than the majority of other people that have tried to be footballers.
Even with that, the ability to recognise that actually it might be affecting you a small bit, few percentages, 5, 6, 10, 3, whatever, is the marginal gains.
It's
actually a really mature perspective. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come off it.
I don't think it's unique to sports stars. I think it's across the pantheon of people in the public domain. I see some of the stuff with Michelle's on television and some of the comments that get made about her, and she feels the inclination to get involved. And I'm like, well, what's the point, Mish? These people can't find their backsides with both hands in a funnel. Why debate with them? It's like that Mark Twain quote, isn't it? You never debate with an idiot because they drag you down to the level and they win on experience. You don't.
Let's talk about Rio Ferdinand, because he's a little bit concerned with Trent Alexander-Arnold's repeated mistakes at Liverpool and a failure to learn. This is what he said on his podcast, Vibe with Fibe. Vibe with 5. I've always said this about defenders. I think Harry Redknapp said this to me when I was really young. Because I was a player a little bit like Trent, I wanted to think about on the ball and passing and moving, dribbling forward and being with the ball more. That was my priority when I was a young defender, and all I thought about. Forget defending. Defending was second, third, fourth on my checklist. He always used to say to me, Rio, I don't mind you making mistakes, but if you make the same mistakes on a regular basis, you're not learning and you're not going to get any better. That's my only criticism. My only real criticism and worry for Trent is that he's making mistakes defensively, especially in one-on-one situations, that he's been making the last year or two. Even before that, you need him to learn. I don't see that he's going into the Newcastle game going, right, I'm going to lock down Gordon. Maybe it's the way tactically that teams are set up nowadays. It's about we have the ball so much that we're trying to take the ball off them, and that's the way we defend. We're defending with the ball, but I don't see that desire, that mentality, that process that goes, right, he's not taking the pee out of me today. Rio quite obviously was one of the best defenders, if not the best defender in the world at one point in time in the mid-2000s. His words do carry weight, and he's got some quite strong points there. Do you agree with them?
I actually make him spot on. It's a really strong piece, and it's correct. And Trent, it's difficult to criticise someone who has such wonderful talent and do so many wonderful things that people enjoy watching. But Sunday was a really very simple showcase of his ill discipline in defending. It was too easy for Gordon to fly by him too often. I'm not on about the mistake, where you let one under your foot or whatever, miscontrol. That happens.
Yeah. But is he capable of it? Because
he's capable of better than what he's showing defensively.
I take what Rio's saying here, because it is almost stating the bleeding obvious. If you keep on making the same mistakes, then people are not going to be comfortable with it, and they're not late. And of course, coaching comes into that part of it. But is there a question here about what he's capable of? Because on one hand, you've got Rio Ferdinand was clearly, evidently capable of improving, because he did and consistently improved till he arrived at the very top of his game and arguably one of the best centre-backs in the world, right? We don't... If the player isn't capable of doing something, we can remonstrate with them as much as we want. We can point them in the direction of what we think is improvement. But if they don't have that characteristic and that ability to be able to do the questions that are asked of him, then this discussion becomes a bit moot, doesn't it?
It's a great point, and I think there is an argument with Trent with this. I think one aspect of what Rio's saying is the look of it, the urgency of it.
Right.
So you can fail at something, and we'll just come to that in a sec. But if you're failing in what is perceived to be a bit of a lackadaisical way, you're not really at it. It's a bit reactive. You're defending. It's not. You're not being proactive. You're not on it. That.
There's no urgency.
Yeah, and I think he's talking about that. Now, you make a really good point. How long do you wait for a player to be able to do the things you think they can do if they haven't shown they can do it before? You're waiting forever. So there comes a point where you go, I either put up with that because of all the good things, or I try and adapt him into a different role where that doesn't become as obvious and as damaging to us. And I think there's probably where Jurgen Klopp's probably gone, I know he's not the best one-on-one defender, and I know he's going to have some problems, but his good far outweighs the bad, and we'll have to live with it.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.